Where are my boots? Looks like I'm not wearing those. So I was in the garden yesterday and I found something that I wasn't expecting to find out there. It's a new pest. I've heard actually a little bit about it over the last couple months. Didn't know we had them here till I found one in the garden. I'm gonna talk a little bit about that later in the video, but now we gotta get the pigs fed. Gotta find a pair of shoes that's not wet that I can go into the pig pen with. These are pretty cool, check it out. I think Mallory and Ben over on Quebec Homestead just talked about these. I think these are called ghost pipe. I've always thought they were a mushroom, but I think they said in their video, or at least I think they did, I'd have to go back and check, that they're like a parasitic plant. They're not technically a fungus. I know the sentence won't make sense because we do this every year and I should have a handle on it by now, but it always blows my mind how quickly things happen in the fall. You're just kind of hanging around, it's midsummer, you know, you're waiting on the garden to produce, you're waiting on your animals to grow, and then next thing you know, it's the second week of September and your meat birds are 2 weeks out from processing, your turkeys are probably a month out from processing, pigs are going to be going in second week of November, so they're about 2 months away. They've still got some weight to put on. The garden has stopped producing and you're getting ready to plant your fall crops. And that's exactly what I was doing yesterday when I found something interesting that I didn't even know we had here. So let's just go over the garden real quick. You can see we've got some potatoes back there, more potatoes over here. That's fall crop. Thai basil here, a couple eggplants there, strawberry patches in the back there. We've got some cabbage, some Swiss chard, some kale, pole beans, and that's it right now. Jackie and I have been working hard to get the garden ready for fall plantings of quick stuff. We'll plant some beets, we'll plant some radishes. We'll basically plant a lot of stuff that you can grow super quickly and that can kind of tolerate moving into a little bit of a frost situation, because we're going to be running into that, I'm sure. And while I was pulling some squash plants last night that were done, they largely stopped producing. They weren't really making anything, and squash borers are kind of around at this point, so it was only a matter of time. I figured I'd clear that bed out and get it ready to throw some radishes and other stuff in there. What I found though was kind of freaked me out a little bit. So I'm here in the garden and I'm pulling the old squash plants and I pick up what I think is an Asian jumping worm. This sounds like something, if you had told me like, oh, you have Asian jumping worms, I would have thought you're pulling my leg. I never would have believed that this was actually a thing. But as it turns out, Asian jumping worms are an invasive worm. They come from Southeast Asia, Vietnam and Korea, I believe. And they are a type of earthworm that is a little bit different than the European earthworms that we currently have in America. So your European earthworms are deep burrowing worms. They go down in the ground. They build channels, they do aeration of the soil, and by and large, to a lot of plants, that is very beneficial to them. However, these Asian jumping worms, they live very close to the surface, and they tend to eat leaf litter and wood chips and things that live on the surface of the soil. And unfortunately for us here in the Northeast, that mulch layer in a forest is very beneficial to native trees and the flora that we have growing here already. Now in a garden situation like this, it's not so bad. We are able to artificially add mulch to this. So it's not the end of the world. You can see all the wood chips that we have here. They're free. Those Asian worms can feel free to actually break this down. If anything, it helps us a little bit because we're adding wood chips year after year. We would actually like these wood chips to break down a little bit faster than they do. So not an issue in the garden, but it was strange to see them because I didn't know we had them here in New Hampshire. I'm gonna do some digging around right here to see if I can find one to show you so that you can see the difference between a typical European earthworm that we have here in the States and these new Asian jumping worms. Oh, I think I see one right here. So you can see just how they get their name. If you put them in your hand, they kind of flip out a little bit. They're very fast moving, and they actually do something that North American earthworms don't. I'll see if I can get them to do it. That's actually not one. That's a regular earthworm. You know what? It's funny. I was thinking this while I was out front with the pigs. I was like, how much would it suck if I'm basing my entire video for today on finding one of these Asian worms and I'm not going to be able to find another one tomorrow? So here is a suspected jumping worm. You can see how it wriggles and writhes. That ring that goes around the upper end of the worm on a jumping worm is going to be one solid ring all the way around, and it's going to be lighter in color and not raised up much. On an earthworm, this piece right here would be raised off the rest of the body, and there would actually be a spot on the bottom where it stopped. It wasn't there anymore. It just kind of blends into the regular segments. The other thing the jumping worms can do is if you grab them by the tail, they can actually drop their tail section, like break it off to try and get away from you. Now this guy is pretty worn out already. He was actually sitting on top of the surface, so he was kind of dry. He must have been out trying to get away from the rain last night. So he's almost dead, so we're gonna feed him to the chickens. Here you go, everyone. I basically just tilled this whole bed by hand looking for worms. Just the surface though. While we only have a few in the garden right now, these worms can rapidly reproduce, and that's fueled by the fact that they don't need more than one worm to reproduce. They can reproduce by themselves, which is pretty crazy if you think about it. If you have one worm that you drop somewhere, it can fertilize its eggs, lay its eggs, and then those eggs can hatch and you'll have more worms, and then those worms can reproduce amongst themselves as well. And again, I'll stress that in the garden, they're not the end of the world. If you find them in your garden, the biggest thing is you want to work on containing them. You don't want to spread them. If you find one, give it to your chickens, give it to your ducks. They love the protein. It's not going to hurt them at all. But if you do find them in your state, it would make sense to report them to the state resource dedicated to this, whether it's your DNR, whether it's your Fish and Game Commission. These are things that states are tracking at this point. They were imported here. They're not endemic here like European earthworms are at this point. So if you find them, you definitely want to bring it to your state's attention so they know where they are and they can kind of keep tabs on things. But just remember, if you do find them in your garden, it's not the end of the world. You know, you're going to be mulching your garden anyway. They're not going to eat the roots of your live plants. They feed on dead and decaying matter as it is. So you don't have to worry about them ruining your garden if that's where you find them, whether it's your flower beds, your vegetable gardens, you have a pumpkin patch. That's not going to be the end of the world for you. You're going to be able to get past it and you'll be okay there. If you thought this video was fun to watch, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. Otherwise, as always, thanks for watching and have a great day.